Hello and greetings from UB. On behalf of the Office of Alumni Engagement and the UB School of Management, we are delighted you are able to join us for today's webinar presentation. My name is Christy Fields, and I manage the Alumni Careers and Lifelong Learning program here at UB. I am also joined today by my wonderful colleague, Joy Rona, who will assist in monitoring any questions you may have. We are both so grateful you are able to join us today and hope you and your family are staying well. Today, it is my honor to welcome our featured presenter, Jay Schwartzkopf. Jay is the Executive in Residence for Finance at the University at Buffalo and serves as advisor to the Terese Kelly Investment Group, a student-run real money investment fund that educates finance students on the particular aspects of global capital markets while providing real-world learning experiences in investment management. Jay is also a silent partner in a private equity fund focused on multifamily real estate in the Southeast. In today's presentation, Jay shares his experiences owning a multi-unit franchise in the Philadelphia-Delaware Valley market and the lessons learned from owning and operating a small business for 7 years after beginning his career at Bank of America and IBM. We will leave some time during today's webinar for Q&A. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the GoToWebinar control panel question section on your screen, and you can chat those to us at any time. In addition, we will be recording today's session, and we're going to send you all a copy within the next 24 hours. With that said, it's my pleasure to turn it over to today's featured presenter, Jay Schwartzkopf.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you everyone for joining us on your lunch break. I'm going to get started right here, but I'm going to first start with a disclaimer. The materials provided in this presentation and any comments or information provided by me are for educational purposes only, and nothing conveyed or provided should be considered legal, accounting, or tax advice. Please contact your own attorney, accountant, or tax professional with any specific questions you have related to information provided that are of legal, accounting, or tax nature. And this is so important. If you're looking at buying a business, you should have these advisors by your side as you pursue probably the biggest decision outside of purchasing a house you will make financially. So my students will tell you 2 things about me. 1, I get right to the point, and 2, I talk too much. So luckily you guys get both. So I figure I might as well just address the elephant in the room right off the bat, and then we'll step into my story. But right now in the economy, we're dealing with after effects of COVID-19 and the current effects. We're dealing with protesters. So I want to talk about 2 issues. 1 is insurance, and 2 is commercial leases. So when I was a franchise owner, I was in a grocery anchored shopping center, and I got a call one night at about 2 a.m. and somebody had put a hammer or threw a rock through my glass door window and had stolen my cash register. So I didn't know what to do, but luckily I had to go drive. I'd wake up, drive down to the and they gave me some names, and I had to pay for a glass window cash that evening so I could open up in the morning. That was $400. I didn't know there was a 24/7 glass repair around, but there apparently are multiple options in the Philadelphia, South Jersey area. I had cash of $200 in my drawer, but the most expensive thing was he stole my register, which was linked up to my computer. And that cash register actually cost me $700. And what I learned about insurance that day was I had, negotiated a lot of insurance policies to pay the least amount while still getting coverage, but my insurance deductible is $1,000. So if you add up what I just told you, window 400, cash 200, register 700, I would pay $1,000 for a $300 recovery. I ended up not filing a claim. So we've seen a lot of glass breaking, and make sure you understand how your glass insurance works. Also, you want to have a good insurance agent who actually educates you on what can go wrong and what policies are. If you noticed in my bullets, there's multiple things there, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are all different things. And if you don't have one of them, like there's riot insurance. If you don't have riot insurance and you get damaged from a riot, you may not be covered even though your place is destroyed. So you really want to understand what's going on with your insurance and make sure you're covered, but most importantly, have an insurance agent that educates you. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was commercial leases. And The first thing is, let's consider an example. If you had a friend that signed a 10-year lease on a commercial shopping center at $2,000 a month on February 2020, how much would you pay him or her today for that lease, right? Because they never got to open their business. COVID's happening. There's so much uncertainty. And what most people don't understand about these commercial leases is you're committing a personal guarantee for 5 years, 10 years, even if you shut down the business. Like, you have to make that $2,000 a month payment. And how much would you pay for that? Because if you look, when we go through my purchasing of my salon and you see the low prices, I never took into account the negative value of having these contractual obligations of $2,000 a month for 5 years that I would have to pay no matter what if I just shut the doors tomorrow. So if you get anything out of this and you understand how to value that and you think about that way, even after you fall in love with some business idea, then I will feel like you've gotten value out of this presentation. Because we all fall in love with ourselves and our confidence and our own business ideas, and sometimes we miss huge red flags. The other thing you want to understand is CAM charges. You can get fixed. This is common area maintenance. So in Buffalo, a big one is like snow plowing the parking lot. And these are allocated as a percentage of your square footage usually, but these can be fixed charges or flexible. And these can sometimes end up being bigger than your lease payment and you're not even prepared for it, and they happen once a year. So really understand what CAM charges are. Understand exclusivity. Like if you're a restaurant, you may not be able to make hot dogs because there's a hot dog restaurant in your shopping center. And these may not seem like big deals when you first sign up because you're so excited. But going down the road, when you can't do stuff and your customers want things, they're not going to understand that you have an exclusivity clause, and that's why you can't deliver something they want. But in terms of COVID-19 and protest impact, if you've done any research on commercial leases, you've heard the term force majeure. And I'm going to really read something about this because it's important. If a force majeure clause specifically enumerates outbreaks, pandemic, disease, or similar language, the COVID-19 pandemic may qualify as a force majeure event. Similarly, government-mandated closures or limitations of business would be covered under terms such as governmental prohibition or governmental restriction under a force majeure provision. So we've seen all of these things happen, which would force you to close your business and not be able to open. Now, this next sentence is important. However, even if these events qualify as force majeure events and are listed in your commercial lease as qualifying events, rent is still likely due. Listen, think about that. You may still have to pay rent, even if the language is in there that says it's a qualifying event. And it's because your lease may say, okay, it's a qualifying event. You're just not obligated to open. So you have to be really careful to make sure you read. And I think this is why it's so important to have a good attorney by your side when entering in these obligations, because I did not. I just signed these things willy-nilly and just signed my personal guarantees because I was just so excited to buy a business and open a business and never even considered this stuff. And how would you would want your force majeure clause to actually give you rent abatements very specifically. And if it's not in there, you might be avoided, even if you qualified for every other category. So anyways, that's some boring stuff, but let me show you why this can be important. So this is a Rite Aid store that was 2 storefronts down from me, literally like 20 feet from my location, and the roof collapsed because of snow. This is a Rite Aid store, and this is what it looked like the next day. And then you can see in the bottom right, there's an unsafe structure notice. This building is declared unsafe. And if I had to close down, my insurance didn't cover me, which is really scary. And luckily I was able to reopen after a few days. But after I researched my insurance, I had no coverage, even though my building was basically condemned 2 stories down and I couldn't open my business and I had nothing. And it was a really scary thought. So I'm hoping that sharing these stories can help you make better decisions, because you're protecting basically your life investment and what you want to pass on to your kids and things like that. But let's get into something much more interesting. So how I started in franchising. So we're going to totally switch gears and now go back to my stories. So picture, I'm about, you guys don't know me, but I'm about 45 years old. I was about 30 years old at the time. And this was about the mid 2000s. And my wife at the time and I took a trip to Vegas to meet some friends. And the first thing that happened was our friends picked us up in a BMW 5 Series or 7 Series. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Because we only had a BMW 3 Series. And I was like, wow, these people are really successful. And they were about the same age as us. So we were relatively young, but we were both, couples were very successful. Everybody worked. And as I was talking to him, he had a very similar background as me. I was in technology sales as a sales engineer. He had worked in information technology, so we both had good jobs. But he had started buying businesses, and he had bought a franchise hair salon. And he was just about to open his 6th hair salon in the Las Vegas area, and they were doing really well, and as evidenced by their nice car. And I know you shouldn't value wealth by someone's nice car, but I was young, and that BMW was always my dream car when I watched LA Law and saw the lawyers running around in their black BMW convertibles as a little kid. So that excited me. What was interesting is all I took from that dinner was hair salons are a great business, and this could be my chance and to own a business and have a lot of success. And what I missed out on that whole dinner was every 5 minutes, he had to take a phone call from one of his businesses and one of his managers to deal with an issue. And he must have been gone 80% of the time from our dinner. And I totally missed that red flag because all I thought about was success and wealth. So that was how I originally got interested in the hair salon business and specifically the franchise model. So in 2007, my wife at the time received a work transfer we were living in Washington, D.C., and got a work transfer to move into the South Jersey area. And I decided it was my chance to put my hat in the ring and become my own boss. I had a business degree, I had tech skills, I had sales experience, I owned some multifamily real estate, I had a few $100,000 in the bank. I read like tons of business leader and sports leader books on team building. I mean, I was ready. I was fired up. And I went on businessesforsale.com and I found a franchise hair salon for sale 2 miles from where our new house was going to be. And the asking price was $75,000, which to me seems so cheap. And it had a net profit of $50,000. I basically looked at, and it had been open 6 years, I guess, at the time. I basically looked at it. This is a no-risk proposition. And with an absentee landlord, I could do better than an absentee owner. Anybody can. So one thing about this listing, just switching gears from my story, if you're looking to buy a business now, you're going to see words in the headlines. They're going to be like turnkey business, just turn the lights on. Because people have walked away are going to be forced to walk away from their businesses just because they weren't able to sustain during the COVID-19 closings. And be very careful about that. You may be able to get, I always call it buying somebody's dream for pennies on the dollar, and you might get some fixtures for free, but there's more to it from the business perspective. Like, is it really making money? And one of the first things that I messed up was the net profit and the sales revenue numbers. Those were so going back to my story now, those numbers were actually from 2005 and not 2006. And I was looking at this in early 2007 because the business had been on the market for a couple years. So I'm going to switch slides real quick. And this was my hair salon purchase. So I ended up negotiating the sale of the salon for $51,000. So here I am. I'm thinking I'm a great negotiator. I wanted a win-win scenario. The seller told me him and his wife had a note on the salon for $51,000. He just needed to get that out of it. And I was like, oh, I like this guy. Let me just help him out right there. And I'll give him his $51,000, and I'm getting a big discount. Not considering that in 2006, the revenue had actually dropped by $50,000 and the profit had dropped by about 70%. So this salon was worth even less just from a business standpoint. And the owner was in distress. He lived over an hour away. He hadn't even set foot in a salon in 3 to 4 months. It was on sale for a couple years. And I didn't even consider the obligations of one, the lease I was going to be personally guaranteeing, which was I think about $2,300 a month, and also the franchise agreement, which I was personally guaranteeing. I was obligated once I signed that franchise agreement to pay $17,000 a year in royalties until the 10-year agreement expired. So I had just looked at 51,000 was a good cheap price. I even had one of my friends partner in with me and split it with me, so it was $25,000 or $25,500 a piece. And I didn't really look at the value. I really should not have paid. I could have probably got that salon for $10,000 looking back to this day. But how I looked at it was, if you look at my slide that says valuation drivers, building a new salon would cost $150,000 to $250,000 in an equivalent 1,200 square foot location. So buying an existing salon for $51,000 was 30% or 75% cheaper than those numbers. I was still in my head stuck on 50,000 in revenue or profit, because that's what it had made in 2005. So I was buying it for 1.1 times EBITDA on 2005 revenue, not realizing hair salons were not the strongest of business for resale, and any salon should go around 1 to 1.5 times EBITDA. So I was not really getting a deal, but it was 2 miles from my home, so I was super excited. And it was a recession-proof business, right? As we're learning with the economy shutting down, people have been very excited to get their haircuts last week. When, I don't know when it opened across the country, but in New York, people were very excited about that. So the one tip I can give you, and there was a presenter on these UB alumni webinars last week, Ted Berenger from the Berenger Group, and they were talking about business valuation, and he made the statement, value the business as if you're getting a divorce and the spouse is going to get half, or value it as if you're inheriting a business and the IRS is going to come after you and take 50%. That changes the dynamic of how you should value these businesses to a much more conservative number, which is usually much more accurate. There's a reason people are selling these businesses. And one thing to consider on a franchise resale, existing franchisors always have first crack when a franchise goes for sale. So because this was on the market for 2 years, it's very likely that nobody was interested in buying this salon. So when you see a franchise resale go on the market, everybody that was in the area that owns franchises already had the chance to own this salon. And sometimes it could be just it was overpriced, but sometimes it's because it was a bad location or they didn't think they could make money doing it. So that's something to consider once it goes on the public market when you're looking at franchise resales. Okay, so the first lesson is take your emotion out of negotiating. You make money when you buy, not when you sell. I think this may have came from Trump's Art of the Deal book, so sorry if you guys, this isn't a political thing, but I think that's where that quote may have came from. And the other part is your offer does not insult the seller. You offer too much. This is not your best friend. This is a business transaction, and you have to do your valuation as emotionless as possible because you're protecting your investment. The seller is not going to help you and your family if things get tough. They are walking away from the deal and selling you something. So don't pretend the seller is your best friend. And I've seen this so many times over and over, both within my franchise system and also with friends that have been looking at businesses and had asked me questions. So that's your first lesson. So the next thing is, I went through a lot of due diligence, and as you can tell, if you look at all these bullets, these are all the things that I was doing in the months leading up to buying the salon. I thought I was very thorough, but the one area where I really did a poor job of was I ignored every piece of data that said the business could fail. I think the best term is I had business beer goggles on, right? No matter what, if my attorney gave me a warning, I ignored it. I go, I'm gonna be fine. If my accountant gave me a warning, I ignored it. If I gave you fine. If my friend in Vegas who owns 6 hair salons gave me some conditional caveats and I just ignored them because I was going to be a success. It didn't matter. I was getting this for a cheap price in my head, what I considered a cheap price. We already discovered that I overpaid. I drove all the local neighborhoods. If you look halfway down in the bullets, it says completed a competitor's discovery process. I actually went through another franchise hair salon's entire discovery process up until flying out to discovery day to understand how a competitive business model worked. And it took weeks of me doing that. So I thought I had done such a thorough job, but I still missed some key things. And this is where you make or lose money on your business, right here. And I missed out on profit drivers for the hair salons, which I'll go into a little bit later about how payroll and everything was messed up. And I could have done some more things. I could have asked better questions, and I'm going to go through that in 2 slides. But I think the lesson learned here is, if you read Warren Buffett's quote, when a management with a reputation for brilliance tackles a business for a reputation for bad economics, it's the reputation of the business that remains intact. And hair salons are a tough business. And if you go into a bank, and luckily we were able to pay cash for this business, but had we went and got a loan for this bank, we would have really struggled to find a lender to give us attractive terms for a hair salon. And you'll find similar situations with restaurants. So keep in mind, when you're trying to look at your first business, when the banks are scared to lend, that's usually a good sign, because that's what they do. There's a reason for that. So you want to work even harder on your due diligence and in your business plan, and make sure you really understand your path to success, because there's a lot of people that have success, but I think we too often focus on the top of the food chain and the people that have success, and don't even see the people in front of our eyes who are working every day and not making that much, even though they're business owners. Because I know in the beginning, when I had my small business, the first 2 years, we were thriving. We grew like 30%, 70%. I'll show you in a couple slides. And people were coming in and thought I was the biggest, most successful guy in the world. Like, I just turned this place around. But the reality was I wasn't making any profit on it those first couple years. And we're going to talk about that more. So now let's just look at franchise selection. So one of the mistakes I made was I was just looking for money. I was defining success through money. And I think the first thing that you should do when you're looking at a franchise is, are you passionate about the product? Like, is this something? Because I talked to a couple of my friends that own franchises and are very successful. And one of my good friends, John, he owned Five Guys in Sarasota, Florida. And he said the reason they did so well from the beginning and picked Five Guys was because when they lived in Northern Virginia, they would go there twice a week and eat. Him and his family, him and his coworkers, and they just loved the product. And I think that's the first thing you got to look for when you are doing franchise selection. And even because you're passionate about the product, it's going to make it easier to do the hard work. And any franchise is hard work. Any small business is hard work at the end of the day. In Buffalo, we had a woman who just opened the Chick-fil-A by the Walden Galleria a couple years ago, and she's killing it. You literally go, there's like 3 lanes for drive-through if you're not from Buffalo, and you go any day, any time of the week, and it's full of cars, and there's a 20 to 30 minute wait. I haven't gone through during the pandemic, but I'm sure it's even busier then. And she's doing great. But I guarantee you, she's never worked harder in her life. And I bet she wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, it's the one thing that's consistent when I've talked to my colleagues that are currently owners of franchises or did own franchises. And they said it was the hardest they've ever worked. They thought they knew a lot about business until they owned a business. And then they really did the learning. But they worked really hard, but they wouldn't trade it for anything because they were working for themselves. And they were building something for themselves and their families, and that was what's important to them about owning a business. But for me, in terms of franchise selection, you gotta love the product, be passionate about the product, and then understand the system you're buying, because that's what at the end of the day, you're ultimately buying a system. And you should look for brand consistency. Like, if you go into a flagship pizzeria that's a new franchise, and the location looks dumpy and has ratty furniture and everything, run for the exits. This is not strong brand consistency. And don't believe somebody says, well, the next one's going to be different or blah, blah, blah. They're going to take your $25,000 or $40,000, cash that check, buy a new car, buy a boat, and then give you limited support on that franchise. You want to look for something that is a system that's well tuned. So, and then you want to look at, is their number of units increasing or decreasing? Like if a franchise has a decreasing number of units, that's a bad sign. That's the first sign that maybe the concept has, reached the end of its runway. What else? And you got to keep in mind when you're buying a franchise, you're paying for a job. There's no other way around it. I don't care how good the system is. For the first year and a half, you're paying for a job because you have to learn the business, because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one that trains the managers, trains the employees until you've got a staff that you can trust and you've been able to scale the business. You'll be working in the business and you'll be learning how to train and execute the system, and you'll make mistakes and you'll learn from them. You'll see what works for you in terms of personnel. And you're going to learn how to manage your manager, right? How do you get your staff to provide the same customer service when you're not there, right? Key is video, right now, video, security, video surveillance, secret shopper programs, they're all in there, but you still have to enforce that. So be ready to spend that time. So now the questions I should have asked from franchisors, when I did my due diligence, I talked to at least 10 franchise owners within my franchise, and I never once asked, how much money are you making? I asked how much sales were. I asked how they manage their employees. I asked keys to hiring. I asked best practices on advertising. I asked how they selected their location. But looking back, I never once asked how much actually profit are you making and what are the margins? And it's just so funny that the most obvious question, especially for someone like me who went into the business to make money, I never asked them how they were making money. And this cost me a lot in the beginning because I didn't know what to do. And another thing with franchises, you want to look for multi-unit ownership, right? Because that's really where you're going to start making the money. You're buying a system so you can scale the business. There's no other reason. So you want to be looking at multi-unit ownership, and you want to look at owners that have a lot of multi-unit ownership, because that means they made so much money on the first one that they're opening 2, 3, 4, 5 units, and they're backing up the Brinks truck to their garage every day with money that they're making. So you're definitely looking for that multi-unit ownership. And there's a great magazine online, this multifamily franchise magazine, and it's great. It has an annual convention and different franchise concepts are there and owners are there and tons of best practices about everything. It's really fascinating stuff. It's a really cottage industry that I never even knew existed. And there's so many successful people that are involved with it, but you have to set things up the right way, and you need scale to do things like offer benefits for your employees. Usually you don't have enough revenue from one location to really have the training infrastructure, benefits infrastructure, and just little overhead things that you would have with multiple units, and in turn, and just advertising scale as well. There's just a lot of little hidden costs that you don't realize exist that you should be asking about. But at the end of the day, questions you ask a franchisor, you got to ask about the money. How much money are you making? What are your margins? Okay. This is so hard, by the way, without having interactive questions. I'm used to dealing with students that ask 500 questions, so I apologize if I'm just babbling. Okay, let's switch to owning the salons. I apologize, I'm reading for a script. So, running the salons, and I'm just checking time. I'm gonna go faster here. So one of my good friends was Ned Quinn, and he owned Burger King restaurants. And I would meet him at the bar almost every night after I had a 12-hour day at my hair salons, because I was just frazzled and I didn't know what was going on. And how he described owning his Burger King restaurants was walking in every day and having the tiger by the tail. And think about how much has to go right in every transaction, or else you may end up on Yelp with a scathing review. So for me, I had 3,000 customers a month. And if you give one bad person a haircut, it's all over social media, right? Or if you mess up somebody's color, God forbid that, because we did color in our salons, it would just be all over social media, and it's really damaging to your reputation and brand. So 3,000 customers a month, one bad haircut, that's 0.03%. Think about how small a ratio that is, and you could get damage to your brand by that. So the analogy of having a tiger by the tail was sort of fit my day every day, because I had to deal with legal issues, finance issues, human resources issues, marketing issues, IT issues. I had to deal with FIPS compliance for the credit card processing. I had to deal with web complaints. I had to deal with operations. I had to pick the paint of the new salon. I mean, there's just so much that was going on. I had to deal with, call the plumber because the hair was clogging the sink. There's something new every day. So if you like being busy and you like working hard, owning a small business is great. But it's not relaxing. Like you literally are, you let go of that tiger, there's going to be some damage unleashed. And then going back, so thinking about the details of a business. So let's go back to Chick-fil-A. I've always been impressed with their drive-through pleasantries. It's just the nicest drive-through experience I've ever had of any of these fast casual restaurants. They're always so polite. And this is what good training and culture is all about. You don't even probably notice it, but if you travel across the country, Chick-fil-A has some of the best drive-through etiquette, hands down, no matter what location you go to. And that comes from training. That's not just hiring good people. That's because the owner has made a commitment through their management team to make sure every person that works the drive-through knows that every experience is supposed to be pleasant and make someone walk away feeling that way, instead of just being transactional. And that's the fun part of the training and coaching and building systems and building a business so you get your end result, which is profit. Okay. So my first 2 months at owning the salons, and I'm going to try to speed up here. I came from IBM, so I started out my first team meeting with a 60 PowerPoint slide to a bunch of artistic hair stylists. So you can imagine how well that went. That did not go very well. I did upgrade the salon right off the bat. We repainted the salon. We got new computers because everyone complained the computers were too slow, especially for processing credit cards. I bought new chairs that were broken. I fixed the sink. So put in a lot of money. I also invested in a ton of expensive print advertising to the carrier routes that were located around my neighborhood. And carrier routes are really cool. You could actually pick. I want to pick this neighborhood and do a mail drop of 1,000 units to this carrier route. And you could target by demographic. Like you would know how much each neighborhood made, had the average salary, how many family members were in. So it's, for someone that liked data, which was me, it was really very interesting. I increased employee pay and benefits, because I want to be a good guy. I'm just looking. Okay, I was just looking at the chat bar, sorry. And I increased employee pay benefits. I made sure my full-time employees all had health insurance, and this was before Obama signed the Affordable Care Act. Remember, he was elected in, I believe, 2008. And I bought mine at the end of 2007. I increased bonuses for the manager. I want everybody to like me, right? And I was going to make everybody more money. I hired stylists with at least 5 years experience to ensure quality, and because they were experienced, I'd let them bring their best practices into the salon. In fact, when I interviewed them, I listened to hear what they had to say. And this is a very important point that we're going to come to at the end. I was enamored of hairstylists that had experience in other salons because I didn't know about the business. And so I would let them come in and bring their best practices, which often were worst practices. But I'm going to come back to that. I took appointments to attract higher end color business, because there's one thing is when you're a slow salon, which our salon was doing 190,000 in revenue the first year I bought it, there was a lot of downtime. So there really wasn't any penalty for doing appointments, right? Let's get somebody in. Let's give a really good white glove service to our color clients who are more profitable and our busy businessmen. So I didn't think anything about that. Even though I had just taken franchise training, and remember, they were teaching me the system, and they said no appointments. And this became important because as the salon got busier, the phone ringing and appointments became a real customer service issue, because there's nothing worse than sitting in the waiting room for 30 minutes and you think you got 5 people in front of you, and then 2 people with appointments come off the street and cut in front of you. It would just lead to lots of customer service issues because there wasn't very good communication. But when I first started, I had an empty salon. I had stylists not working. So I was like, oh, sure, let's take appointments, not a problem. But I didn't follow the system. So this is your first thing when I keep talking about the franchise system. If you're gonna buy a franchise system and not follow the system, you're probably gonna fail. There's a reason they do this across thousands of locations. I invested in team building. I really believed in investing in my staff. I rented limo buses for staff to Atlantic City. We had our Christmas party at the Brownstone that was owned by the Manzos from the Real Housewives of New Jersey. In fact, we got pictures with some of the Real Housewives of New Jersey when we went up there for that. And you know, for me, this was the type of a business I wanted to run. I wanted my employees to feel good about it, and I wanted them to be rewarded for working hard because they were working hard for me. And I'm trying to switch. Okay. So the results the first 2 years. We increased revenue by 70%. Annual revenue at the first location was 330,000. Total customers had increased. Our color business had doubled. Our customers loved our personalized advertising. The stylists loved the team building events. All the employees were all making 30 to 40% more salary, plus significantly more in tip money because it was busy now. They went from sitting around to actually make money. And I decided to open a second location. And this was another big mistake I made. I had not figured out how to run my salon properly yet, my first hair salon. And then I opened the second salon because I had a development agreement. I had paid $12,500 for a second license. And I had a clock ticking that I was supposed to open it up within 12 months. And I went and found a location. So I spent all my time looking for locations before I had scaled the processes of my own business. And this was a big mistake for me. I should have waited before I opened the second location. And I thought I was in a hurry because I thought somebody was going to steal my spot. Nobody was going to steal that location. But in my mind, I was like, I need to lock this down and open up as quickly as possible. Okay. So what was really happening? So the second I would walk out the door of my hair salon, all these issues would pop up because I was the babysitter, right? I mean, if I was there, everything was fine. As soon as I walked out, there was high turnover. I lost good people. I kept bad people. My customer service worsened every time I lost somebody good. My new customer retention. And that means if we get advertising to bring in a new customer, how likely were we to retain them for a second visit, third visit, or fourth visit? If we kept them for 4 visits, they became a regular customer. So that's how I measured my return on investment on advertising, and that's that terminology there. And it's important your point of sale system has that type of data. My hairstylists were literally fighting and arguing in front of customers. I would watch shows on cable television about hair salons, and before I owned a hair salon, and be like, those people are crazy. And then now, once I owned a hair salon, I was like, oh my God, this is my life. It's really like this. And then, but you know, I'm over exaggerating. The hairstylists are like some of the greatest people I know, and some of my best friends are hairstylists. But new stylists, one thing that I had a real problem with was I would hire somebody new, and immediately my old stylist would tell them what they can and can't get away with. Like they would tell them how to get away with smoke breaks, and they wouldn't focus on like the good stuff, right? What was Jay's expectation for customer service? How do we build the business? I had a stylist steal over $15,000, like $20 at a time. You know, drawer would be short $20, $100. And it took a long time for me to catch on because I was too busy opening a second salon. I couldn't track my drawer every night. And at the end of the day, I made no money. I literally made no profit, but all my employees were making 30 to 40% more. And my manager was making tons on her bonuses because I created a horrible bonus structure that didn't align with my goals. And think about how painful that was. I was working every day and I wasn't making any money, but everybody else was, and they were causing me problems. It was very stressful, and it got to the point where I didn't even want to enter my own salon. Like I was that defeated. And no matter how many hours I put in, no matter how hard I worked, no matter what changes I made, I just couldn't turn it around. Like I could increase revenue, right? I had no problem pumping the funnel with advertising and getting people in, but it wasn't turning into profit. It was very frustrating. So when the lesson here was, Michael Gerber, the E-Myth Revisited. I'm going to show you this book in a couple slides. He calls it the entrepreneurial seizure. We get the urge to be their own boss, but then you go to work for a maniac yourself. And that's really what happened to me. Like, I wanted to be my own boss so bad, but I was crazy. I was a horrible boss for myself. And I was working in the business and not on the business. And that's such an important concept. And when I read the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and my friend Maria Lucia Pace referenced this book to me, and she saved me. Like, I was a couple years in my business and just failing. And when she was a hair salon owner and also our color educator, and she says, you need to read this book. And this is the small business Bible in my mind. This literally changed my life in terms of this owning this franchise. And because I was determined to turn this around. So I had owned other businesses. I owned a bunch of multifamily real estate at the time. So I was okay if this failed, but the competitor in me was like, I'm going to figure this out. I want to figure this out. And this was really the turning point where reading this book by Michael Gerber in terms of me getting control of my businesses and making them real businesses instead of just a place where I work, where I bought a job with a maniac boss who was myself. So these are some books that I got, and I'm just going to check the time real quick to see where we're at, because we're at 12:42. So I'll just go real quick. I already mentioned the E-Myth Revisited, why most small businesses don't work. If you owned your business for a couple years and you're struggling and don't know what's going on, this book is amazing. This book will change your life. It's probably not as relevant if you haven't bought a business yet, because you won't understand the journey and the struggle in the beginning. But once you've owned it for a year or so, and then you've seen how hard it is, and then you're trying to figure out how to grow and scale the business, I think this book's a gold mine. Then for me, for the hair salon business, I got this book by John DeJulia, Secret Service. And then with Anthony Whitaker, it was really interesting. I bought training from two Manhattan celebrity stylists, Wendy and Oscar Barnes. They work for like MTV, they work for Vogue. They won the National Hairstylist and Colorist of the Year award in the industry. I mean, they were really well regarded within the industry, and I spent some money to train my stylists with them. And as I was talking to them, they said, and telling them about my issues, they said, you need to meet Anthony Whitaker, one of our good friends who grew up at Vidal Sassoon and has owned some of the most successful salons in the world. And luckily he was coming to the area for training, and I attended his training and got his book. And what he did was he literally forced me to sit down and document every phone call I would get when I took a day off. So for example, like I would try to take a day off and my phone would ring off the hook, just like that first person in Vegas at dinner. And they would just ask stuff. Can I turn down the tempers? A customer's too hot. They want the air conditioner cooling. We're out of ones. What do we do? The credit card machine's not working. The customer wants a refund. The stylist is having a bad day, is causing issues. Can we send her home? One of the stylists had a boyfriend on a skateboard who would skate back and forth in front of the door for 4 hours, disrupting every customer that came in. What do we do with that? You know, stylists were on their cell phones in the back instead of ready to greet customers. Customers were coming to the front desk and being ignored because the stylists were busy with clients in the chairs. I was getting calls for everything, and you name it. The fire inspector came and needed to inspect the fire extinguishers. What do we do? And this was all happening on my day off. And what Anthony started, I read the E-Myth, and then I met Anthony, and it made me realize that these were my fault that I got these calls, because I never trained someone properly to handle all these situations. You literally have to document everything and train. You can't have any gray area, and so that it's a business that scales, that can run just as good as with you in it as with you out of it. And in fact, it should run better with you out of it. And that was my problem. I had the opposite. I was working in my salon, not on my salon. And between E-Myth and Grow by Anthony Whitaker, I was starting to learn how to work on my salon. I also had David Velasco color training series. I read about franchises from McDonald's behind the Archers. I learned about quality inspections, secret shoppers, and stuff like that. And I have another slide. I'm going to put it up, but why don't we just turn it over to questions, because we're at 12:45. Is that okay, Chrissy?
Absolutely, Jay. Definitely. This is such great information you've been sharing, and really appreciate you also taking us on your journey. We have some questions that have come in, so I'll go ahead and start with those. And Jay, if we finish the questions and you want to put that last slide up, you certainly can. But the first question: how do you find an attorney to work with? Should they be a franchise attorney? This person, Jay, that's asking the question is in the process of getting a franchise, and a lot of this information is resonating with them. So your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I mean, the great question. It's mainly through networking. You can try to cold call people, but I would find other franchise owners, go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, or talk to your banker, and they'll know who the good attorneys are. Because you can get the same advice for $300 and $5,000 if you get the wrong attorney, right? So you really want to get somebody that has good franchise experience, and even better, you usually want somebody that actually worked at one of the big that was a franchise attorney at McDonald's or at Wendy's or something, because they know how to negotiate these commercial leases and they know what to look for. Now, you're not going to be able to make many changes if you're trying to negotiate a franchise agreement, but I just want you to understand what you're getting into, because those franchise agreements are pretty locked in, and they won't be modified. But I want you to understand what obligations you're getting into, and then commercial leases, there's a lot of things you can negotiate, everything from CAM charges to personal guarantees. Like, you don't have to guarantee all 10 years. You can negotiate, hey, I'm going to only guarantee the first 1 year. If I walk away, I want to guarantee 1+ year. They might not agree to it, but it might give you a negotiating point to move down to. But that's how I would look. It was through networking and just asking around bankers and fellow franchise owners. And, don't just settle for a friend of a friend who's an attorney, because they might not have the expertise you need.
Excellent. Thanks, Jay. The next question: any tips or suggestions on obtaining a first small business loan or gaining capital to start out?
I think we teach all our students in the entrepreneurial track, when they don't have the funds to buy a business, because students are typically really broke, is the first tap friends and family. I think that's the first area. And then the other thing is, talk to your commercial banker and ask them, what do you need? What kind of business plan do you need to present to make it more credible? What kind of personal credit score? You're probably going to have to personally guarantee that first loan, unless you're buying an asset that's way undervalued and you get lucky. But you're going to have to know what the business plan looks like, and you're going to have to know what businesses are stronger than other. And when you first start your business, don't put everything on your personal credit card. Get a business credit card and start building your business's credit, and because that's going to help you later on. We saw that with PPP and EIDL, that just came out. You need a relationship with your bank, and if you just put everything on your personal credit card, you're only building up your personal credit. You're not building up your business's credit. This becomes less of an issue for bigger businesses, but for smaller businesses, it's a common mistake.
Excellent advice there, Jay. The next question has to deal with financing. So this person has been a not-for-profit director and they own their own small farm. They're considering buying a business but may not have enough cash. Any suggestions on financing?
I mean, again, friends and family, and talk to your banker about what realistically. Banks have different metrics. I just bought a hotel in 2018 in Myrtle Beach, and with my partners, and we didn't realize that hotels were growing quickly out of favor with the lenders, and we're only offering 60 to 65% loan to value, because we had traditionally gotten 80% loan to value on our multifamily investments. So had we talked to a banker before we purchased it, I'm still making mistakes in business over and over. I retired in 2014 and I'm still making dumb mistakes. So hopefully you're learning anything. Don't make the same mistakes I do. And maybe don't listen to me. I'm probably wrong. But had we talked to a banker before we bought the hotel, we would have realized, hey, we're not going to be able to refi it at the value we thought, because that asset class is not getting the loan to value ratios that we are used to.
Great. Thank you so much, Jay. The next question I have here, I know you talked a lot about, when you're a franchise owner, you're paying for your job, really. This next question is asking, aside from the obvious, what are some of the big differences experienced between being an employee and then a franchise owner?
The biggest difference is when you shut the door at 5 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, you're not done. When somebody threw the brick through the window at 3 a.m., I got the phone call and had to go down there and meet the police. But with that, you're also in charge of every decision, which is very empowering, and you get to make the experience what you want. So it was great. Like, I wanted to have a good Christmas party for my my employees, my jobs with students. And there are certain things that I wanted to create. I wanted to provide health insurance for my full-time employees, and that made me feel good about the role I was playing. I was active in the community, donating tons of gift baskets and things like that. But the biggest difference is at the end of the day, it's your business, even if you shut the doors, and go home. You're still thinking about it constantly because there's always things. Remember the tiger by the tail? You don't just shut that off at 5 o'clock. You're still thinking about those 100 things that have to get done right, or you need to improve the next day or deal with. So that's the big difference. But I think you're doing it for yourself, which is nice.
Excellent. Thank you. It looks like at this point, those are all the questions that have come through. Oh, we do have one more here. Any suggestions on local networking groups to join when owning a business like BNI?
I think this isn't a networking group, but if you own a business in the Buffalo area, the best thing you could do, I think, and if you're struggling to figure out how to grow it to the next level, is enroll at CEL, the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, and you will be with a bunch of like-minded business owners. It costs a lot of money, but you will get it back. You will grow your business and scale your business, and you will have more balance in your life. I couldn't recommend it more. It's the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, CEL. It's associated with UB. That's one of the best ones. But I think I believe it or not, I help students get jobs at Wall Street in New York City, even though I'm in Buffalo, and I don't really network in Buffalo, New York that much. So I don't know where you find small business owners because I don't usually talk about this topic. I talk about investment banking and the stock markets. So I apologize, I don't have a better answer, but CEL, BNI, there's a couple in Buffalo, but I would start with there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jay. Another question that we do have here. Without industry experience, how did you go about competing with other salons that had way more experience in the business?
Well, when you buy a franchise, you're buying a system, right? So they brought in trainers. They would have, if I hired somebody, they would bring in a trainer for me to teach them about our color line. They would do introductory haircuts. So when you buy a system, you don't necessarily have to be an expert in the industry. I think where I messed up was right off the bat, I started deviating from the system, like taking appointments, even though they said not to take appointments. So that when I got busy, I started running into these problems. But when you buy a franchise, they should have a system that's very repeatable, that's very executable, that you could just bring any minimum wage employee in and deliver a great customer service experience because the system's so foolproof. And if the system isn't foolproof, you shouldn't buy that system. But for the hair business, it wasn't that, I learned a lot about the hair business because I wanted to make it work. But if you can just follow the system, and they provide the resources and training. And I researched multiple franchise hair salon opportunities, and they all had training mechanisms, where they would take stylists and train them for a week or whatever to get them caught up to speed.
Excellent. Jay, the next question. We are living in a pandemic right now. So any concerns about opening a franchise in the face of COVID-19?
Lots of concerns. I would pay a lot less, and I would really think about what your business model is going to look like as things start to reopen. Now, it might present opportunities, but you're not going to want to buy a restaurant that doesn't have a good drive-through takeout logistics right now, because that's a big revenue generator. or doesn't have a big patio, right? If you got a small patio, you're getting hurt right now because you're going to open a patio. So I think you really just got to rethink what the business model is going to look like. And I would discount valuations significantly off 2019 numbers. I would just, I don't even know if I would cut them in half or cut them by 75%. I would just take those valuations off 2019 and just chop them. But again, going back to my disclaimer, talk to your accountants, your financial planners. Don't just listen to me.
Fantastic, Jay. Thank you so much. I know we're approaching the top of the hour, and I just want to say thank you, really, on behalf of the Office of Alumni Engagement, the UB School of Management, the entire UB community. Thank you for sharing your time, your knowledge, and your expertise with us. I learned so much from you, as I know so many have as well, so we are so grateful. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded, and we'll send you all the link within the next 24 hours. In addition, save the date for our next webinar, scheduled for this coming Wednesday, June 18th. We're going to welcome back UB alumnus Christopher Kai. He's going to show you how to become a successful online entrepreneur. So how to maybe start an online training business, an online coaching business, how to use social media to market your online business. So he'll be joining us on this coming Wednesday. More information in the follow-up email to today's presentation. And you can also see all of our upcoming webinars and our webinar archive library on our website as well. And we'll get you all Jay's follow-up recording within the next 24 hours, as well as all of this information. With that said, I will turn it back over to Jay for any closing remarks.
Thank you for attending. And also, if you become successful and make a lot of money, I run the Terese Kelly Investment Group at UB. It's a student endowment. We take kids to New York City and help them compete with Ivy League students so that they can get jobs on Wall Street. And we always can use donations to pay for travel and hotel rooms. Hotel rooms in New York City are very expensive. I'm sure it's going to get more expensive. And you can actually donate directly to our fund. So if you ever want to do that, email me. I'll be glad. And this is only after I make you money. Hopefully I helped you save money or make money. But thank you again for attending.
Excellent, Jay. Thank you so much. Jay's email is on this final slide. We will put that in the follow-up email as well, in case you do want to touch base with him in regards to the donations to the Terese Kelly Group, or just any follow-up questions you may have. So again, thank you all. Take care, stay well, and enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thank you.